Please remain seated and do this. I have a mean physiotherapist who lives in a cave near here, and he makes me do this often. He has the personality of a chainsaw. And I get to sit on this very thin mat. And it's not yoga, it's these really difficult exercises. And these difficult exercises make me feel uncomfortable and they make me feel awkward. And it reminds me that the role of leaders is often to feel awkward and uncomfortable. So the big idea that I want to share with you this afternoon this evening is that leadership, it is about exercising leadership that matters. And that in fact the exercise of leadership should be a daily practice. No different than our yoga mats and our meditation practices. I worked with this wonderful man named Mario Patnaud, and Mario taught me to recognize leadership when it is being exercised well. And he used to ask me all the time, he used to say, do you recognize it when you see it? Do you recognize when leadership is being exercised? Do you know what's happening? Or do you recognize the results that take place? This matters for obvious reasons. Exercising leadership is the best shot we have at finding solutions to some of the greatest challenges that we face. Si on veut faire les liens et faire du progrès avec les défis qui envisagent nos institutions, nos organisations, nos milieux de travail, nos communautés, moi, je pense que c'est foncièrement dans l'exercice du leadership que ça va se passer. Vous savez que Margaret Wheatley, c'est une auteure extraordinaire. C'est une penseure extraordinaire. Puis Margaret Wheatley est reconnue pour ses 4 questions, dont une qui fait vraiment affaire avec le leadership. C'est-à-dire qu'elle nous pose la question, avez-vous eu un coup d'œil d'un futur qui vous inspire ou qui vous motive? Avez-vous eu une expérience qui vous motive ou qui vous inspire? Puis moi, je pense que ça, c'est foncièrement la question de leadership. C'est-à-dire que le leadership, vous savez, c'est en fonction du futur. C'est en fonction d'être capable de dessiner un tableau d'une vision future, d'être capable d'arriver à des pas, des étapes, des plans, pour faire en sorte que les gens se dirigent vers cet état futur. C'est d'avoir les capacités de communication pour être capable de rassembler des gens, les inspirer et les amener vers cette question future. You know, we've got some great thinkers who have helped us to think about the qualities of leadership. We've had this for a while now. And John Maxwell talking to us about character and commitment and charisma. And now we have some very real science that connects the dots between competencies, like strategic perspective, the ability to develop others, the drive for results. We have some very clear science now that shows us that those competencies, those very abilities, not only enable leaders when they can combine a number of them together to be very effective, but their organizations succeed. And whether your organization is in the business of doing good or being profitable, we know that these competencies are the essence of leadership. Mais vous savez aussi que le leadership, souvent, c'est perçu comme un rôle, comme un titre, comme une boîte dans un organigramme. Je pense que le leadership et l'exercice de leadership, c'est beaucoup plus que ça. Puis moi, j'ai eu l'expérience de mettre ces 3 morceaux-là ensemble, compétences, qualité et les rôles, quand j'étais la personne assise dans la salle à côté de vous lorsque vous perdiez votre emploi. For a number of years, I was the guy in the next room when you were losing your job. So I was the one who had coached your manager and talked to them and about how to deliver that news in a humane and appropriate way. And of course, try to keep them out of court and not get sued. And you can imagine what I would see when I would walk in that room. I met decent, hardworking people who were at the wrong place at the wrong time. I met decent, hardworking individuals who, quite frankly, were in the wrong job. And I also met a number of individuals who had all the qualities, all the competencies, and they had the title, but for some reason, the exercise of leadership wasn't happening. One of the pieces that I came to really appreciate is that some of these individuals had lost the ability to experiment and improvise. And given the qualities, given the competencies, given that package, the ability to experiment and improvise is key. I want to tell you about one such instance, a very small instance. And it has to do with our mayor here in Moncton, Georges Leblanc. Those of you who are from this community, and even if you're not, you will know that in June of this year, this community and families were dealt an awful blow. There was an exercise of leadership that took place by hundreds of organizations in ways we will never know, from the RCMP to first responders, to business people, to ordinary citizens. But this one point that I want to draw attention to you has to do with that fateful day when Damien Thériault and Georges Leblanc had to announce to the world what had transpired. And that was very scripted and very organized, as well it should have been. So what then transpired, however, was an absolute act of improvisation. And it was so powerful in its vulnerability. And it's when the mayor took Damien in his arms. Absolutely improvised act of leadership. Now, I know Georges. He's not a touchy-feely guy. He will tell you that. But what compelled him at that moment, obviously, was that that's what needed to happen in order for him to exercise leadership. So, I believe that vulnerability is an exercise in leadership, and that's exactly what we saw from Georges. Now, if you want to see a leader who is vulnerable, get them to stand in front of their people and say, I don't have the answer. I don't know what to do. On fait juste de finir une élection ici au Nouveau-Brunswick. Puis moi, j'observais pour voir, y a-t-il de nos chefs politiques, y a-t-il de nos politiciens, y a-t-il des leaders politiques qui vont se mettre devant nous autres et vont dire, aucune idée. Pas une clou. On n'a pas de réponse ni une plateforme pour ça. Vous autres, vous l'avez peut-être vu ou entendu. Moi, j'ai manqué ça. Moi, je ne l'ai pas vu. Puis savez-vous, je pense que je comprends pourquoi. Parce que nous autres, on présume que nos leaders vont avoir toutes les réponses. C'est une demande c'est trop demandé au leadership de penser qu'ils vont avoir toutes les réponses. Heather Conway is the executive vice president of CBC. This national treasure that is the CBC is fighting to find its way in a new media landscape and needs to redefine itself. She made the news, national news, when she stood in front of people and she says, I really don't know who has the answer. And you know what? I think that's an extraordinary exercise in leadership. I think it's an extraordinary exercise in leadership, especially when it's coupled with a statement that goes something like, but why don't we engage some voices that can help us define the problem and find a pathway to solutions in order for us to make progress? Why don't we find the voices who can help us think about this differently? Why don't we find the voices who disagree with us? In fact, I was interested that today our premier designate has given status to the Green Party. He had no obligation to do that. They didn't have enough seats. But he is bringing that voice into our legislature because we need to hear those differing voices. So for leaders to say, I don't know, is fine, especially when they are able to engage other voices. My son recently took me to a sporting event with 103,000 people. It was a very intimate affair. 103,000 people tried to embark on a few railway cars and even fewer buses. What transpired was I heard a voice of leadership like I had never heard at a spontaneous moment, which really gave rise to my notion that leadership sometimes is just about saying the right thing at the right time. So you can imagine that the buses would roll up and people would crush to the door of the bus. Hundreds of people would come in. There was this one woman who was at the very front, and she was on crutches. And people were prying the doors open, and people were pushing in behind her. It was very clear if that door opened, she was going to fall. And out of the back of the room, the back of this crowd, the best Bronx accent you've ever heard said, people, remember your humanity. everybody took a step back and took a breath. The hands that were pushing her, that were potentially going to push her through, were holding her and guided her through the steps. People who were elbowing and shouldering their way in, all of a sudden started to let people find their way. Sometimes exercising leadership is just about making sure something gets said. Sometimes what needs to be said is a question. I have the absolute privilege to work with a brilliant marketer and an absolutely tireless community volunteer who asks me the best questions. His name is David Hawkins. And when he asks me questions, my brain hurts, but it never hurts me. He's respectful in the questions that he asks me, but he always challenges my assumptions. He always makes me come up with new options and new ways of thinking of things. I think exercising leadership is about asking really, really smart questions. So, what if we think of leadership as something you exercise? What if we think of leadership as something that is a daily practice? What if we think of leadership as a place where we experiment and improvise? What if we think of leadership as a place where it's okay to be vulnerable? What if we think of leadership as a place where we engage those voices that don't get heard? I want to leave you with 3 wishes. I'll grant you 3 wishes to help you in your exercise of leadership. The first wish that I want to grant you, and this is based on the work of Marty Linsky and Ron Heifetz at Harvard, with whom I had the distinct pleasure of doing a little bit of work with in this area. My first wish for you is that you have a confidant. A confidant is somebody who does not work with you. They are not part of that community group that you're a part of. They don't get it, but they get you and they love you. Confident dans votre vie, c'est une personne qu'on ne peut pas utiliser le jargon, les buzzwords. Il faut leur parler dans un langage simple, mais ils vous aiment, puis veulent votre mieux. My second wish for you is that you have allies. Allies work with you, shoulder to shoulder. Ils sont là, ils comprennent la dynamique, ils comprennent qu'est-ce qui se passe, puis ils peuvent vous aider. Ils peuvent vous aider à faire le nécessaire. These allies are the ones that will help you scheme and plot to do good work. My last wish for you is that you have sanctuary. Now, sanctuary, en français, on dit c'est refuge, un lieu de refuge. Un lieu de refuge, ça peut être un endroit, ça peut être la plage, ça peut être le bois, ça peut être une piste cyclable. But it doesn't have to be a place. It can be prayer, it can be meditation, it can be running marathons and triathlons. It can be listening to Madonna, to Miles, or to Mozart. But it's that place where you can go to get perspective. It can be learning to play the clarinet. My wish for you is that you have a place where you can go where you gain perspective, which enables you to exercise leadership and make it part of your daily practice. Join me, please. Merci.